Oh, it says go. I never paid attention to that. Good morning.
We're here. Join us. Hello. Welcome everybody to the Emotional Entrepreneur Show with Summer and
Jen, what's up?
there you are. So howdy everybody. Today we're going to be talking about something really exciting. Authentic amplified, authenticity amplified, and how you can be authentic in what you do, in your work, in your business. And I'm so excited about this. Yes, sometimes I slip over my words, but that's okay. So how are you, Jen?
I'm great. We were just talking about the election right before we went live, but other than that, I'm great.
Yes, and I'm trying to can you look on your Instagram to see if we're up? Because mine's not
Let me see.
registering yet. And I know we're there because I just put in the key. Thank you for checking that out. I'm going to check out LinkedIn. Make sure we're
Yep, we are live.
Okay, yay. Okay. It is taking forever for mine to sync up. Huh, interesting. Okay. So we are going to continue to go, and I just want to make sure we're live on LinkedIn so you can all join us. Yes, we are live on LinkedIn. So join us on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Instagram because we are there just for you. And we want to hear your input on this very subject. Again, it's authenticity amplified. It's how you craft your business to be true to who you are, to really magnify who you are and be in alignment with that. I think a lot of times, and I know I went through this too, and sometimes still do, is how am I supposed to present? Like, what would be the best way in relation to my personality, my beliefs and values, like the transparency, not so much the honesty, because I am what you see. Like, you get honesty from me. That's something you get from Jen and I. We are pretty much an open book. We're out there with our stuff. And here's the problem for me. I'm a little goofy and nerdy. And so sometimes I'm like, do I bring out that goofy side more or do I not? Because a lot of times, coming up the ranks of, again, psychology, clinical psychology, which that was my focus. That's what I did before becoming an entrepreneur and worked in hospitals and ran departments and different things, that there was a certain expectation of how you were to present. And so that was kind of conditioned in me, right? And as an entrepreneur, guess what? You're running your own show.
Right.
So it's not that you do or don't want to present a certain way, but can I let more of that goofiness show? Do I have to be as rigid or as stoic as I was running, departments at a hospital? Because again, people look at you to be grounded, to be rooted, to make sure you're stable, to make sure that, or whatever their perception is of that, right? And so you don't want to be bouncing all over the place. Because let me tell you, I had a doctor who was bouncing all over the place. And I was just like, is she going to focus on me or is she going to listen? And trust me, when I got back home and I looked at her notes, I was like, oh gosh, there were notes that were wrong. And I was
Wow.
like, wow, that kind of scared me. And I had to go to her nurse and I had to go to her and I said, can you please fix this? They said I had COVID and I didn't have COVID.
Hmm.
I never had COVID. She said that I had said that COVID made me feel better. My sinuses feel better. I'm like, who would ever say that?
COVID made me feel better.
I'm like, what is this? Like,
I didn't get that strain.
who notes are these, right? And I was like, that COVID made my breathing better. I was like, huh?
It wasn't COVID.
No. And I was just like, and my husband looked at me because he was at the appointment with me, and I was like, God, she's bouncing all over the walls, right? I don't know if she had a lack of sleep, she was tired that day, if that's her normal presentation. But I asked, I was like, listen, these things need to be fixed in my chart, and that's why it's like I wonder if people, based on conditioning, feel like they have to present a certain way.
It's
And
possible.
And what does that look like? Right. So, what I would challenge you to do is this: do a self assessment. When you're looking at being your authentic self, do a self assessment. Understand what your passions, your purpose, your impact, your skills, your strengths are. But more importantly, get in touch. I think a lot of people don't do this part. Get in touch with their own personality type and know what that is. Because
Right.
I know, have you ever felt this way, Jen, where your personality is so strong that it's like, okay, I got to tone it down a little bit? And it's not to tone it down because people won't like me. It's just like, to reach a larger audience or to reach the audience that you want to reach so that they can hear you, see you, be impassioned with you. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's like what Bibiana said. She said, "Yeah, you gotta read the room." So, yeah, there are times when I especially meetings, where I'm, like, usually the one cracking jokes, I'm sarcastic, I make jokes about everything. I mean, I'm still professional and serious, but I mean, I'm just that's just my personality, and there's times when I've tried it, it's like, "Wonk, wonk," like, I'm like and then in my brain, I'm like, "Okay, we are not gonna crack any jokes." So, it just depends on who's in the room, it depends on, like, the personality types that I'm around. I have to read that. And then
Yeah.
there's times when there is another jokester or another silly person, and then I will tone it down because, like, the room don't need both of us. Or especially if they're just way too much. It's like I
Right.
I will read that kind of stuff and just adjust because it's like I'm not trying to go in a battle with somebody like, "Oh, I'm funnier," or, things like that, but it's just like, "Dude, like, you're enough for everybody." Like, I don't need to add to it, and so I will read the room and adjust and, scan and see like, "Okay, what are the personalities here?" And then there's times where it's like, freaking absolutely dead. It's like,
Yeah.
"Are you guys awake?" And then I have to go the opposite way and amplify 'cause I have to pull the energy out of the audience, and so it can go that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important is one, knowing how to read the room, understanding your own personality. I think that as business owners, we can absolutely infuse that personality into our business because why would you want to present in some way that you really don't feel inside, right? Or that you're masking because who are you trying to reach? Who do you want to reach? Are you going to continue to mask that who you are? Or are you going to be the social person that you feel comfortable with in your business and have your business align with who you really are?
Right.
Right. And I think that's really important. So do that self assessment and understand. I know we always talk about our strengths, our skills, our passion, but understand who you are at a deeper level. Right.
Right.
And that means I don't think that, I think we all can pull out our skills. I think we all know that what we're passionate about. But understanding our personality, understanding our emotional, where we are emotionally, right? From day to day, from month to month, from about our business, about who works with us, about who we're trying to reach, and be that person. Because I think you're going to reach the audience you want to reach by being exactly who you are.
Right, and I think it's important to make sure that that is what you're doing because you wanna attract the people that you get along with or that resonate with you or you're on the same level. And if we try to be somebody that we're not, or we get so wrapped up and conscious of like, well, I need to be this way. If you're already saying I need to be such and such, then you're already being inauthentic because it feels forced.
Oh,
So,
right.
it's so important, like, how do you wanna show up? And don't worry about like, well, I don't know if other people why are you worried about attracting an audience or a community that's not gonna be in alignment with you? Then you're gonna have to keep up this whole persona, and it's
Yeah.
going to eventually catch up to you, and it won't feel authentic, and more so, it will feel like work. It'll feel
Right.
like extra work, and it's like,
Yeah.
there's enough. You don't need to try to be somebody else, and I think, especially with social media, we see other people like here's an example. I'm not one to do goofy dances. That's just not I'm a dancer, but I'm not one to do goofy dances, and I think it's funny when I watch other people do it, but do I wanna do it? No. Do I have I thought about it? Like, "Oh, do I have to do that now? Do I have to do some silly dance and then, do this and point to text?" And I
Yeah.
don't that's just not my thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any but if that's something somebody else loves to do, then heck, show up and do that. I appreciate that, but
Yeah.
do I feel like I want it? No, I don't. I don't.
Yeah.
So I don't. But because I think there's so many different ways people can show up, and that's where you do have to assess like, okay, how do I want to show up? Does this feel like, feel fun to me? Because if it feels very forced, it's just not going to be sustainable. You're eventually going to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so that's an example I would always think of, like, especially with TikTok coming out back in the day. It's like, okay, do I have to do all these crazy dances? And
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of people jumped on because they thought that would get them more visual, like more, more airtime, or that would reach a certain audience. But if you're forcing that, is that really in alignment with your business or yourself or any of that? And so why are you forcing it? And that's why I'm saying, like, hey, do that self assessment. Take a time out, check in with yourself. And I love that example, Jen, about TikTok too, because there were a lot of, after TikTok had been out around for a few years, people are like, is it just dancing? Or do they do anything else? And as a matter of fact, they do. But what I see now is people being more of their authentic self. They're really tapping into those personal attributes that are really reaching those people, their demographic, the people that they're focused on reaching, right? So whether or not they're selling candy, they're selling jewelry, they're selling purses, they're selling wigs, they're selling pearls, they're selling whatever they're doing, they're being themselves, making, baking or making cakes. Or, I mean, I watch a lot of these things just to see how people are presenting,
right.
who are they reaching, how they're crafting their unique proposition, how that's in alignment with, their individuality. So all of these things I'm looking at and paying attention to because I'm like seeing who's gaining traction because they are in alignment with who they are, how they're presenting. And it's not necessarily dancing. It might be that I mean, there's the one girl that makes cakes and she's got a frown on her face constantly, but she's so good at making cakes. And she's like, this is what I'm here to do. I love making cakes and I'm going to talk to you about my day. And she does like just the craziest, coolest things. And I'm just like, can you smile? But I'm still watching her make cakes, right?
Right. There's a guy too I saw on TikTok. He makes it's like I don't know what country it's in, but, and then I started wondering if this was planned or this is like the way that I don't know if it was intentional, but it's funny 'cause it's him and sometimes the kids are in it, and they make that cotton candy that they spin and then
Yes.
they make flowers, right? These giant
Oh,
flowers of different colors, like orange, red, and they show like they're putting the dye, the color sugar, and then they make the cotton candy. But what's so funny is this Asian guy, and he's just standing in the background. I swear the video starts like this.
right.
And he's just he either looks like, "I don't give a crap," or he's pissed off, but that's what's so funny about it, and he's just making the cotton candy. But I was like,
Oh
and then you, of course, you go to the comments, you're like, "Is this supposed to be this way?" But it's
my god!
just so funny, but then you go to the account, you're like, "Oh my gosh, there's, like, millions of people following this."
Oh my god, it's so crazy. Oh my gosh. Well, here's okay, and Jen, I'm gonna need you to read
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
the because I'm not getting it. I'm not
Alright,
getting it.
so Bibiana said my this is earlier, "My best photo ever for a passport, I had pneumonia." Seriously, I was like, "How can I frame this?" Oh my gosh, you must have looked, like, super tired and drained. And then, Mike's here. Hey, Mike. He said, A phrase I really like, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." That's a great
Oh,
one.
I love
And
that.
then Viviana said, I'm assuming that's Oscar Wilde. She said, Oscar Wilde was so smart." Great quote. "I like the British lady who drinks and makes sarcastic remarks about the creepy recipes, the butter and ramen noodles." She's hilarious. Who's that?
I don't know who that is.
At first,
I
I was
don't
like,
think
"Is that
I've seen
the British
that.
bitch?" And then I was like, "No, I don't think that's no."
I
That's
don't think I've
funny.
seen that one. You know what? Years ago, remember that lady? I think it was a Wendy's commercial, and it was the older lady, and she would be like, "Where's the beef?"
Yeah.
Right?
Was that Wendy's? I think it was Wendy's.
I think it was Wendy's, and she was with her 2 other girlfriends, and they're standing by behind her, and she's at the counter, and she's like, "Where's the beef?" And
Oh my
that's the
god.
first time, like, I
The
saw it. I
crankiest voice
remember
ever.
seeing some lady who was, like, just vocal and kind of raspy and just kind of, edgy, and I'm thinking, "Well, that's kinda cool," outside of Dr. Ruth. Like, when I'd watched
Mm,
Dr. Ruth, I was like, "Okay, she's talking about a subject matter that's very edgy." That was back in the '80s, and she
right,
was herself, right? And she connected with a lot of people because guess what? She was talking about something that was meaningful to her, that she had studied, that she had a lot of knowledge on, and she could connect with her audience because her audience wanted to truly know what was A, B, or C, or what was happening to my body, or what was like, what could I do better, in regards to like my intimate life, my sex life, my whatever. And she was answering those questions and she
right.
was right out there with it. And I was just like, whoa, am I really hearing this? But we were. And so that's what I'm saying. I mean, that was pretty edgy back then in the '80s. And you look at this now and you go, okay, so where are we today? Where are you today with who you are, being in alignment with your authenticity? What does that mean? What does that mean to you? And I know because of conditioning. I mean, I went to Catholic school. I was raised by a mom who like taught me how to, I love her, but she was like, okay, you want to do this and you want to do that and you want to fold your napkin this way and you want to sit at a table this way and you want to like make sure that you're going from left and inward, in regards to your utensils. You want to set a table this way. I mean, it was about Miss Manners, right? A lot of
Right.
times. And so I was just like, okay, what do I do? How do I act? And then you finally take a step out and go, all right, who am I in all of this and all of this influence, right? Whether it's a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, a educator, or a Catholic school, or a church, or whatever it is, who are you in all of that? When do you take a step outside and objectively look at you, who you are, how you're presenting, what you want people to know about you? And I think because of a lot of that upbringing too, I saw a lot of young girls, especially going to Catholic school at that time, just break loose after we graduated. They were like, I'm done, I'm out.
There's no balance, or it's just too rigid sometimes, and
Yeah.
yeah, reminds me of religion. That's a whole different show.
Yeah. But I mean, it lends to the whole idea of who you are, right? And how we've been taught to do or think about A, B, or C. So as a business owner, how you are you in alignment with your thoughts, your actions, your personality, how you really are speaking to, and your own attributes, and how you're speaking to your audience and what audience you want to reach. Because if you feel out of alignment, people feel that.
Oh, yeah.
People know that. They can sense it right away.
Right.
you know so what I'm saying is when you think about that, unique selling proposition, have that reflect your individuality. Because guess what? You are going to reach the people that you want to reach when you think about who is that? How am I presenting? Is my personality infused in all of this, right? And it's not that, and I want to go back to say something too, especially about there's a difference for me about religion and spirituality. And my spirit, and I am a spiritual person. But the way that is constructed in how I live my daily life, how that aligns with my business, it's me being kind. It's me being a good person. It's me, doing those types of things where I want to model that because I feel that and I'm passionate about being kind.
Right.
So I think that's
Absolutely.
not. What about you, Jen? How are you creating your genuine connections with others and building trust and authenticity with the people that you're speaking with in your business? When
For
you
me,
out
I
there
think
too.
I think for me, it's as simple as, like, sharing things that typically, you know and it required a lot of growth, but, over the years, but there's things that were like, in the beginning, I would not have shared about a bankruptcy or, a divorce or things like that, and so, part of being authentic is, like, how open and how willing are you to be open so that people can learn about what you have gone through, but I think that's when I say it's a growth thing, you have to get past those things sometimes. Unless you're that person that's just like a completely open book from the jump and you just like to talk about all the I'm not that way. I kind of need some, incubator time and then it's like, let me get past this. Now let me tell you what happened. Um but it's when I see other people do that, I appreciate it. I'm like, wow, I admire the bravery. I admire the courage that these people have to be able to share something so intimate, so personal, whether it's health, whether it's a financial issue, whether it's a breakdown of a partnership relationship or something that went wrong in their business. It's because when you can take yourself out of the equation and not be maybe the intent isn't to be selfish, but that's kind of how I look at it. Like, who am I to be selfish to not share this? Because how many people can learn from this? And if I'm willing to put myself out there and talk about it and then be able to talk about the problem, then somebody always says, like, "Oh my gosh, that really encouraged me. I can't believe, you went through that." But it's good to see that you're on the other side of it because that gives me hope that I'm kind of going through it too. So it was really good for me to hear this. You just never know who you're influencing or who you are impacting by just sharing your story. So that's another area of being authentic. How willing are you to be open? Of course, you're not comfortable. I'm not saying go do it. The demonstration of being courageous enough to share that because that's how you do build connections. Like you just feel like you know that person. This is why we all love to see behind the scenes stuff. This is why you watch deleted scenes in the movies, right? You like to see, like, oh, what went wrong? What went wrong?
Yeah.
I saw the final cut, but what went wrong? Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, right? If we use the movie analogy, you see the deleted scenes, or you watch the director's cut, and you're just
Yeah.
like, man, that stuff's fascinating, right? Because you're just like,
Yes.
oh, I didn't know they had to go through that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they almost didn't finish filming Star Wars. They ran out of money. I mean, just like crazy things
You're
like that.
right.
What happens, right? It makes you appreciate the final product.
Yeah.
You appreciate it more because you realize, like, my gosh, these people had to go through so much just to get to the final thing. And you don't a phrase you guys have heard me say, you see the glory, but you don't know the story.
Yes.
And when people are able to be authentic and real and honest about what has happened to them, you're letting them realize, like, you know what, you are human, and you humanize the experience, and that's what people can relate to. I've also said, nobody relates to perfection, but when you can humanize your experience and then tell it from a loving space of, like, hey, this this is how I messed up, you can learn from it too. It's like
Yeah.
people appreciate that, and that's when you can be authentic and real like that. Of course, if you're comfortable, that's where you build the connections. That's where you build the trust, and that's where people will want to, talk to you, work with you, because they see that you're willing to be that real. And so if you're real with yourself like that, they'll know that you'll be honest with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to read a few of these. I do have some of the comments up here. So, Bibiana says her sarcasm is so funny. I think she was referring to Dr. Ruth. She only stitches videos of really awful this
That was
lady
that lady
about
on
that.
TikTok,
Yeah.
the weird
Awful
recipes.
recipes like
Yeah,
mayo and cream cheese. And then she says Dr. Ruth was brilliant and sassy. She absolutely was. And I love that because that was really, showed us a different way of presenting. She could be a doctor, but she could be sassy and she could be brilliant and she could do all of that and she could be nerdy and she could be, and I love that because I was like, it gave me permission to be sassy and funny and nerdy at the same time. And I'm like, gosh, can I do that? Right. And so
yeah.
Fit Realtor said
Hey, Edwin.
the great thing about being yourself online is they won't have a shock when they meet you in person. Many will already have rapport with you online on your online self. Absolutely.
Right.
So it was like Jen and we were just so authentic and we were like open books with each other that we had worked with each other maybe for like a year or 2 years before we met in person. But it
I
was
think
like,
it was 2 years. It
yeah,
was something crazy like that.
right. And it felt like
Like,
we
we
knew each other
already met.
forever. Right,
It was
exactly.
so weird.
It was just seamless. And it's still like that. So it's like, okay, based on who you are, people connect with you. I love what you said. Nobody relates to perfection. And that is so true because guess what? We're not perfect as humans. We are so imperfect and yet we are trying to present as perfect. And yet we know what happens behind the scenes because we're all human, right?
Right.
And so Bibiana says, I like people who are unique. I don't like cookie cutter anything. Mike says, thumbs up, Bibiana. And then Mike says, Fit Real at a good point. I think that, one of the things I want to mention here too is as we're talking about authenticity, as we're talking about ownership of our own businesses, ownership of ourselves, right? It's like, who are we? Who do we own that we are, right? Because I think it took a while. It's not because I had imposter syndrome, but it also took a while as I grew and I developed and I continue to develop to put out there who I am, right?
Right.
And it's not because I'm holding back, it's because I'm growing from minute to minute, from year to year, from month to month as I learn, as I gain new wisdom. And so I think, though, when you look at just general personality traits, so from a clinical perspective, we usually see by 18, we're kind of set in regards to our personality, what that personality looks like. It's not to say behavior, it's personality. You can even see your own babies having different personalities when they're born, right? And you're like, oh, this one's different than, Mikey's different than Sarah, right? And it's like, yeah, you can see it. And then as you grow, you can continue to see how that personality develops. By 18, you usually are like, okay, she's been this way all her life, for
Same
the
with
last,
pets.
say it again.
Same with pets.
Yeah, same with pets. Exactly. I mean, I've got two right here that, have their own unique personalities. And yet it's like there's also things that I've done to train them, to condition them, right? And so as human beings, we need to look at that and go, what was that they did to condition me, whether it was to be nice or to be to be mindful or to be like a good kid, respectful, whatever that was, and however that looked, right? Take a look, do your own self assessment, align your personality and what you're putting out there with your business. Also, craft your unique selling proposition in alignment with your own individuality, and then be transparent. And I think you mentioned that, Jen, about transparency, because that really lends to building openness, building an opportunity to get to know you, and honesty. I also like what you said about what happens behind the scenes. And I always look for the laughs. How did this break down for them? Could they really keep a straight face? Were they really like, how did their personality get infused in that, right? And you would occasionally see that on Saturday Night Live, where they're sitting at a table and all of a sudden they're doing a skit and somebody would just crack. They'd begin to crack. And then all of a sudden everybody would begin to
And
crack,
they're trying to
right?
hide it.
Right. And I just saw some outtakes for like Young Frankenstein with Gene Wilder and
Terry Carr.
Madeline
Oh, she
Carr,
passed
Terry.
away, didn't she?
Oh yeah, she just passed away, and I just, God, if that wasn't somebody who was awesome, right? She just oozed joy and just brightness, right? Her spirit seemed so bright. And it was like, I just saw recently in the last year some outtakes from Young Frankenstein. And I was like, how can they keep it straight? How can they keep a straight face? And you saw them crack and you saw them laugh. And you're like, yes, that's what I'm relating to. I love that, right? So it's not all just scripted. There's all these parts that are, from human beings where we shouldn't always be scripted. Let that
Right.
human side show. That's that authenticity. Jen?
Viviana says, "I loved her in Mr. Mom."
Oh, yeah. Me too.
Yeah. Another thing that I was thinking about when it comes to authenticity in relation to your craft, your business is, a lot of times, especially if you're a coach, you're in this online space, you hear a lot of like, "Oh, you need to make this, and you have to make this, and this is what you need
Mhm.
to sell." And then, I think sometimes we get lost in all that mix. Oh, we have to sell high ticket programs. Oh, we have to sell low ticket product. I mean, it's just all over the freaking place. And
Yeah.
I had this conversation with my friend, we always had this conversation over the last year, and I told her one day, I said, I'm done. I'm like, I don't want to. I got real with myself, and I said, I don't want to do XYZ anymore. I
Yeah.
just don't want to do it like that anymore. And I'm really embracing this, like, I want things to be done with ease. I want it to be so aligned that I enjoy doing whatever the thing is. And how do I create that so that I don't feel any drudgery over a certain task or certain projects or certain pro. And then if it's something that I really do want to do, but there's going to be task involved into executing whichever way that you want to, create your wealth and money. But what I have found is like there's also ways where like, okay, well, how do I outsource this? How do I hire somebody else to do that? And
Yeah.
so I was doing that in little ways, right? At one point I had a VA. Now I have my son. He's doing some, posting for me. For and helping me with, my clients and stuff. So it's like, how do I continue to create ways where pull myself out of the parts that I don't like but are necessary? And then how do I eliminate the things that I really don't want to do? Because I don't say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And just getting really direct and clear about like, do I really want to do this? And if I don't, is it because I don't like it, I don't believe in it, or it doesn't bring me joy? I mean, it could be that simple. Does it light you up? Because if for me personally, if I'm not getting excited about it, or the particular part of some possibly doing, like, I will not do it. I won't do it. And so I've noticed for me in the past year, like I have been very intentional about, what projects and types of things do I want to do. And then I feel like I'm being very authentic with myself. Cause then I'm not trying to create a situation where I'm dreading it. So
Yeah.
for me, that has worked really, really well, especially in the past year. And because I've been in that space, or allowed myself to be in that space of like, no, I'm going to say yes to the things that I get excited about and they're fun for me. You know, it's making money and with ease. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm not going into like, oh gosh, I got to do this. Like, I don't want to feel that way. So I feel like me doing that has allowed me to be authentic to not only myself, but the type of business that I'm creating.
You know what? I love that you said that because I want to touch on something, but I also want to read this comment by Bibiana. She says, sometimes the simple things are sophistication. I love that because when I go into designing something or looking at something or creating or producing something, sometimes for me, it was the simplicity of classic, and that aligned with that simple and classic. And that was okay for me, right? So it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be this whole extravagant thing. Simply classic is fine to me too. So simple things are sophistication. I think so too. I absolutely, it doesn't
Yes.
clutter things up, right? And so one of the things I want to go back to that you said, Jen, and then we'll kind of close out here, but is getting caught up in that snowball effect of if you do this, you're going to make $1,000, or if you do this, you're going to make $1 trillion, or if you do this, you're going to do this. And you get caught up in that snowball of effect, right? And it's
Right.
like, what does that create for you? Chaos, angst, imposter syndrome, right? And it's like,
Shut down for some people, like,
it's
they get especially with if there's tech involved, they're just shut down and like, "I don't know how to do that," and then they just don't do it at all.
absolutely. And then they just say, okay, I'm done. Right. And that's where, or do I really belong in this space? That's where that imposter syndrome comes in.
Mm,
Right. So sometimes you do need to, as Jen said, stop listening to all that freaking noise and get right and true with who you are and in alignment with that. And that's why I started out with do that self assessment, who you are. It's not just about your strengths, your skills, but your personality, who you are authentically, and how you want to present out there, because, and in an authentic way, because that's what's going to speak to people. That's what's going to construct that and help build that honesty and that transparency with the audience you're trying to reach. And I just love that example that you gave, Jen, because it really does speak to how do you step outside of all that noise to be who
right.
you are and who you want to be, where you're feeling like this is the life I want to live. This is the way that I want to run my business, without all that noise and all those people just saying, oh, you got to do it this way. You got to do it this way. It's this strategy. It's that strategy. Yeah, that's all important. And I'm not discounting that, some of that, right? But there's a lot of noise in there too.
Oh my
And
gosh, there's a ton of noise, so you
yeah,
have to stop, like you said, stop and yeah, ask yourself, like, how what do you wanna do? Like, do you wanna and I think there's a time here's the other thing too, depending on where you are in this journey, there's
yeah.
gonna be a time and place where you wanna do it simple, and then when you wanna scale, you're gonna have to level up and get complicated.
In
Doesn't mean
some
you have to
regard,
do it though. It doesn't mean you have to do it. You can hire people to set that, funnel up or set something up for you in automation and whatnot. It doesn't mean you have to do it.
yeah,
But, there's a season. There's gonna be a season where you're just making it simple and this is good enough. But if we're
right.
somebody that's trying to wait till like, well, I'm gonna wait till I get to this point and then I'm gonna go build it, then you ain't gonna get anywhere. So it's like you have to be real with yourself in terms of what part of the journey you're at. And, going back to, the simplicity thing, being sophisticated. I remember, like, there were a few coaches that I've, spoken to, or I've watched their webinars, or I've had conversations on Zoom with them, and I am blown away sometimes. I swear, they're selling, like, high ticket. One was, like, 8,000, one was 15,000, and they sold it on a Google Doc. And it is beautiful. I was like, "Man, I love it." You know what? Something like that gave me so much encouragement. I was like, "Screw these crazy funnels."
Right,
All they did was share a Google Doc with me with
right. And
with
you
the breakdown.
and here's
It
the
was so simple. They did the breakdown, and then there was a link, and then it just took me to the payment page, and I was like, "I did it." And I was like, when I see examples like that, I'm like, there's no excuse. We don't have to make it crazy. Now, by the same token, don't get me wrong. I've worked with other coaches where they did have the fancy funnel and they
yeah,
had the tripwire and everything. And then I'm just like, oh, this is cool
yeah,
because there's an upsell opportunity. So I appreciate both structures. But what I'm saying to y'all, if you're watching, is that there's a time and place to do either one. No excuses because you can do it really simple and then you can do it really fancy. But
yeah,
you got to do with what works for you at the time that you're going through that. It doesn't always have to be I got to wait till I have all the money and then I can hire somebody and do the crazy stuff. Like work with where you're at. I love this line in the this line. This line in the Bible. His praise in the Bible. Prosper, it's prosper where you're planted. That means master where you're at right now in order to elevate to the next thing. And then, yeah, this
This is
line
why
in
I
the
love this
Bible.
girl, because we just laugh and laugh and laugh about
This
the
line in
silliest
the
things.
Bible. I'm sorry, Jesus.
Oh my god, this gives me so
You
much
know
joy.
that one line in the
Okay.
Bible in the book of Jeremiah?
You remember that line? Oh
That
my
one
god.
line.
I love it. So, okay, we gotta close it up. What's your nugget?
Oh man. I would say, I would say that my nugget almost said my line. My nugget my nugget is ask yourself, are you showing up the way you want to show up? I think it just that simple reflection. And if the answer is, no, because maybe you're feeling like I have to do the dance or I have to do these, reaction videos or whatever it is that you're doing, then stop and ask yourself, like, are you showing up the way you want to? And then if the answer is no, then ask yourself next, well, what is it that I can do so that I enjoy this more? And that I can still be myself and still want to show up, but feel more in alignment with how I'm showing up.
Mm, I love that.
Thank you.
And mine's similar. I want you, as I started out, I want you to do a self-assessment, just a mini self-assessment, and understand your unique strengths, your skills, your passions, your personal attributes, your personality. And when you're done doing that, what I'd like you to do is kind of identify some of those things and do one of those things that might make you feel a little uncomfortable, but is truly in alignment with who you are, and step out and try something that showcases that, right? Because when we start to do that, even though people might push back, and I know you've been there too, and you've questioned things, Jen, and maybe you have done that outside. We've had those discussions, right, Jen? And I've done it myself. Where can I show a little bit more of that nerdiness? Can I show a little bit more of that nerdiness? Can I show a little bit more of that goofiness? Can I show? And as I started doing it, they're like, ah, that's Summer, right? So,
Right.
and they just get it, and it's who I am. It's truly I'm being my authentic self. And if you do something that feels a little uncomfortable, but it's true to who you are, but you have hidden that, try that and see
Mm,
where that goes. Because guess what? It's gonna be more fluid, comfortable in the long run if you're honest and true to yourself rather than hiding who you really are.
love it, love it.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We always love hearing from you, hearing your input. That's so important. We never say we have all the answers because honestly, you're nerds unite. That's right, Mike.
Yes.
And you have the answers. And we love hearing from you and sharing this platform with you. So join us next week as we have another topic.
Oh, right
Yes.
there. I put it there. Next week, it's mentorship in the age of remote work, strategies for cross-generational collaboration.
Yay! Oh my gosh. I love that, Jen, that you just did that. That's
I know. I
perfect.
was like, why am I not giving you guys a preview? We need to tell you
Yeah.
what's coming up.
That's awesome. Okay, we're gonna dance this out. You know how we dance this in, we dance this out because I like these funny little dances. I like to like dance it out and end with something joyful. All right, dance with us. See you next Tuesday, everyone. Woo! Nerdy. Nerdlandia. That's right. Woo! Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you for being here.
Bye, everyone.